In this video, I'm going to teach you the 3 pieces of a perfect worship team devotional. If you want to have amazing worship team devotionals every single week, this is what you need to do. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com. This is the place where we talk about how to lead yourself well, lead your church well, and lead worship well. So if you're interested in that, click subscribe down below. Also, down in the description below, you'll find a link to Leading Worship Well, Worship Team Devotionals. It's closing tomorrow. So if you want to join in and get new worship team devotionals every single week, you should probably sign up today because it's going to be closing after that. So check that out in the description below. More about that at the end of this video. But if you just want to make your own worship team devotionals and you want to lead that time by yourself, I want to help you do that. And I've got this formula, these 3 things that you need to have in your worship team devotional to make sure that it goes well. So let's talk about those 3 things. The first thing that you need is teaching. We want to teach our teams, right? We want to help them move forward in their relationships with each other, in their faith. That's what we want to do. And so we need to have a teaching on whatever we want to teach for the day. So the key to that, though, is that all too often I just see people, if you've just gotten a devotional online, oftentimes it's just like a Bible study. Right? And there's nothing wrong with Bible studies. There's nothing wrong with reading a devotional that you got online. But I think that we can do better for our worship teams, and we can actually make it specific to our worship teams. And so if you are going to be teaching your worship team something, keep in mind that these aren't just a random group of people in your church. These are members of your worship team. And so we can speak to them like members of our worship team, and we can pull in things that tie in directly to their responsibilities and what they do on a Sunday morning and throughout the week. And so if you are going to be leading a worship team devotional, make sure that it is specific to them, or else they could have just gone to a Bible study, right? But this is the one time during the week that you have to speak directly to your team. So don't waste it, and don't be shy about your teaching. If you have something that you specifically want to say it to them. Say it to their face, right? If you want them to be on time, walk them through the process of why they need to be on time, and not just you need to show up on time, but let them know that that helps them prepare better, that it serves their team well. There are elegant ways to do it without just coming down on your team, right? If that's the teaching that you want to do. If you want to teach them to model worship on the stage, don't just give them some random story about how King David worshiped in the Bible and expect them to automatically relate that to worshiping on the stage, modeling worship. Actually tell them that. You can tell them that because they are your worship team members. So the first thing that you need in your worship team devotional is teaching, and not just any teaching, but it should be specific to the people that you're leading, which is your worship team. The second thing that you need for your worship devotional is discussion. And this is where a lot of people get this backwards, I think. They think that the teaching, either all they do is teach, and they talk for 10 or 15 minutes, or they talk for 10 minutes and only have like 1 or 2 discussion questions at the end. But the way that I like to do it is flip that on its head so that discussion is the bulk of your devotional time. We can learn from each other, right? I found it much more beneficial over my years of leading worship teams to not just talk at them for 10 or 15 minutes, but to throw out the general idea for like 5 minutes tops, and then allow them the opportunity to respond. Ask them a couple thought-provoking questions about the simple thing that they just learned. And remember, I didn't talk about this last time, but I should have. You have 52 weeks in a year to teach your team. So you don't have to pack your devotionals full with a whole systematic theology of worship and what it means to be a worship leader. Just give them one piece, and then allow the majority of your your devotional time to be discussion. And that does a couple things. It gets people to own the material that you've presented. If you're just speaking it, they're just going to tune it out. Let's be honest, right? But if you give them the opportunity to think about it and discuss it, then they filter it through their brains, share their opinions, and figure out how it works in the context of your worship ministry, but also what they do every single week. So let discussion be the content. And I think we get overwhelmed as worship leaders whenever we're doing these worship team devotionals because we're like, oh, I've got to come up with 15 minutes of teaching if I ever want to lead my team well. But that's not what you need to do. You need to come up with one simple idea. And then what you really need to spend your time doing is crafting those powerful discussion questions that will allow your team to own what they've just heard. So we've got the teaching, we've got discussion. What's next? Finally, number 3, pray. Pray at the end. I know that's an obvious one, but I think sometimes we skip over it. And when I say pray, I'm not talking about like a quick 10 or 15 second prayer before you head up on stage, but like pray for what you just learned. If you just learned a specific thing, ask God to continue to reveal how you can implement that into your leading, implement that into your worship leading, implement that into your relationships with each other. Pray for that. Pray for the specific thing that you just learned, because that's going to reinforce it one more time to your team. But also we want to surrender that to God and allow Him to lead us in that. So we've got teaching, which is one short point. We've got discussion, which is the bulk of our devotional. That way we don't have to come up with a 15-minute lecture every single time we lead worship team devotionals. We come up with some questions and allow our team to own what they've learned, and then we pray for it at the end. Teaching, discussion, prayer. That is the process for a great worship team devotional. Now, if you don't want to come up with a worship team devotional every single week, I know that that can be difficult. I've got good news. I'm doing it for you, which is why I've created Leading Worship Well worship team devotionals. It's open today and it'll close tomorrow as of this video coming out. So make sure to click the link down below in the description. Worship Team Devotionals, Leading Worship Well Worship Team Devotionals is a subscription where I send you a new devotional every single week, and I use this formula that I just shared with you to create every single devotional. You get a teaching that is specific to your worship team. Not just some random devotional about some random Bible verse or some general spiritual truth, but it will be specific to being a worship team member. It'll be a short devotional, about 5 minutes long, but then the power comes in whenever there are the discussion questions where your team will have the opportunity to own what they've just learned, and they'll get to discuss it and figure out how it works in the specific context of your worship ministry and the specific context of what they do as a worship team leader. So if you never want to run out of worship team devotionals again, and always make sure that your team is led well relationally and spiritually, make sure to check that out in the description below. Once again, it closes tomorrow, so you need to sign up right now. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.